The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the faint ticking of the clock in the modest kitchen. Rain tapped against the windows, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo Claire Bennett's heartbeat as she leaned against the counter. Her body trembled from exhaustion. Her mind was a blur of fatigue and quiet desperation. It had been another long day work at the diner, errands, Noah's homework. Bills stacked higher than she could manage. When the dizziness hit her, it came like a wave crashing onto fragile glass. Claire clutched at the counter, gasping, but the strength left her body in seconds. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the kitchen floor, the sound of the fall startling the little boy in the next room. 6-year-old Noah froze. "Mum," he whispered, fear trembling in his small voice. He ran into the kitchen and saw her lying motionless, her chest rising in shallow breaths. Panic set in. He had been told once, in case of emergency, to call for help. But Noah didn't remember the number for the neighbors. His tiny hands reached for the phone on the counter, and with shaking fingers, he dialed the only number he knew by heart, the one his mother had whispered once, long ago and never again. The call rang into the night, miles away, in the penthouse office overlooking Seattle. Ethan Stone sat in silence, nursing a glass of bourbon. The skyline glittered below him, symbols of the empire he had built: gold, steel, glass, and power. His phone buzzed across the desk. Irritated, he reached for it. The screen showed a number he hadn't seen in years. His breath caught. He answered, voice clipped. "Hello." A child's shaky voice broke through. Hello. My mum." She fell. "She's not waking up." Ethan's heart lurched violently. "Who is this?" "I'm Noah," the boy whispered. "Mum said, if something ever happened, call this number." Ethan's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. His mind reeled. Noah, the name cut into him like lightning. "Stay calm," Ethan forced out, his CEO composure cracking. "Tell me your address." "I'm coming." The boy gave the location. Ethan was already grabbing his keys, leaving his empire behind as he tore into the stormy night, his chest pounding with a truth he had long buried. As the city lights blurred past his windshield, memories clawed their way back. 7 years ago, Claire Bennett had been everything. A nurse with a laugh that lit up the darkest corners of his ambition. A woman who believed in him before the world did. They had met when Ethan was still just a rising executive. Nights were spent in cheap apartments, dreaming of futures neither could yet see. Claire had believed in the man behind the hunger, not the empire. But ambition had claws. Ethan's rise demanded sacrifices, late nights, broken promises, missed dinners. Arguments grew into chasms. Claire, weary of waiting for a love always postponed, walked away. She never told him she was carrying his child. Ethan had buried the loss in wealth, in deals, in power. Yet every success was laced with emptiness, a shadow he could never name. Now, with the sound of that small, frightened voice in his ear, the shadow had a name: Noah. The emergency room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Claire lay on a gurney, pale but breathing steadily as doctors examined her. Noah sat nearby, clutching a stuffed bear, his eyes swollen from tears. When Ethan strode in, drenched from the storm, the world seemed to stop. Claire's eyes fluttered open, and when she saw him, shock and fury flickered across her face. "You," she rasped. "Claire," Ethan breathed, his voice hoarse. "You have no right," I answered the phone. he cut in, his gaze flicking to Noah. He called me. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. She turned her face away, pain etched in every line. The doctor interrupted. Explaining her collapse was exhaustion and stress, nothing fatal. Relief loosened the knot in Ethan's chest, but the weight of unspoken truths hung heavier than ever. Noah watched the stranger warily. The man was tall, sharp-suited despite the storm, his eyes intense but softened when they landed on him. "You must be Noah," Ethan said softly. Crouching to eye level, Noah nodded hesitantly. "You came. I'll always come," Ethan said before he could stop himself. The words startled him. They felt too raw, too real. Claire's glare pierced him, but Noah's small hand reached out, brushing against Ethan's sleeve. The boy's touch was tentative, testing. Ethan's throat tightened. He had faced boardrooms full of wolves, but this child's touch undid him completely. Back home. After Claire was discharged, tension filled every corner of the modest house. Claire moved stiffly, avoiding Ethan's gaze. "You can't just walk in and act like you belong," she said, her voice sharp. "You left me behind." "I didn't know," Ethan replied, his voice low. "If I had," she cut him off. "But you didn't, and I raised him alone. Don't think you can erase that with money or guilt." Her words cut, but Ethan didn't flinch. He looked toward Noah, who was quietly drawing at the kitchen table, oblivious to the storm between them. "I don't want to erase anything," Ethan said finally. "I just want a chance." Claire's silence was heavier than any rejection. Later that night. Ethan drove back to the city, but his penthouse no longer felt like home. He parked overlooking the glittering skyline, memories clawing at him. He remembered the moment Claire had walked away, the nights he had buried himself in contracts to drown the loneliness. Now he knew his empire had been built on a hollow foundation. For 7 years, he had missed first steps, first words, first laughter, the weight of it pressed down until his chest ached. He had always feared failure, but this was the one failure that mattered most. At dawn, Ethan returned to Maple Street. Claire opened the door, surprise flashing across her face. "I'm not here to fight," he said quietly. I want to be here. For him. For whatever you'll allow." Noah peeked out from behind his mother, eyes lighting up when he saw Ethan. He smiled a small, uncertain smile, but real. Ethan's heart cracked open. For the first time in years, he felt like a man, not a machine. Claire hesitated, then stepped aside, just enough to let him in. The story was far from healed, but it had begun again. Sunlight filtered into the modest home on Maple Street, painting the faded curtains gold. Claire moved quietly in the kitchen, her every movement careful, guarded. She could feel Ethan's presence behind her. Though he said nothing, Noah ate his cereal at the table, eyes flicking between his parents. There was something in his small face, hope, fear, curiosity, all mixed together. Ethan cleared his throat. "I can drive him to school today." Claire stiffened. "That's not necessary." But Noah's eyes lit up. "Really, you'd do that?" Ethan nodded, and before Claire could argue further, Noah grabbed his backpack. For the first time in years, Ethan walked his son out the door, leaving Claire alone with a storm of emotions she couldn't name. As Ethan drove, the car felt unnaturally quiet. Noah sat stiffly in the back, fiddling with the zipper of his bag. Finally, he whispered, "Are you my dad?" Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. Yes, he said softly. I am. The word hung in the air like fragile glass. Noah stared at his reflection in the window. Why weren't you here? Ethan's chest tightened. Because I didn't know. And because I made mistakes. But I want to be here now. If you'll let me. Noah didn't answer, but his small shoulders relaxed just slightly. Asterisk at the diner that afternoon. Claire wiped down tables while co-workers whispered behind her. Is that Ethan Stone? The billionaire. Claire's cheeks burned. She didn't need the gossip, the pity, or the judgment. She had worked hard to build a life for Noah, even if it was small and imperfect. Now, with Ethan's return, all the walls she had built were shaking. When Ethan came to pick Noah up after school, Claire stood at the door, arms folded. You can't just appear and disrupt everything. He has a routine. A life. Ethan's voice was calm. And I want to be part of it. Not to disrupt it, just to belong. Claire's resolve faltered, but she said nothing. Asterisk, the following weekend, Noah played in the yard. Ethan watched from the porch, awkward in his expensive shoes sinking into the mud. When the ball rolled toward him, he bent to pick it up, hesitating before tossing it gently back. Noah caught it, grinned, and shouted again. They played for hours. By evening, Noah's laughter filled the air, and for the first time, Claire saw her son look at Ethan not with suspicion, but with joy. Later, Noah curled up on the couch, resting his head on Ethan's shoulder as he drifted to sleep. Ethan's eyes stung with tears he didn't try to hide. He whispered into Noah's hair, I'm sorry I missed so much. I'll never miss again. From the doorway, Claire watched, her heart aching with both pain and hope. Asterisk back in the city, Ethan's phone buzzed constantly. The board demanded his attention. Investors whispered of instability. His assistant warned, if you keep disappearing, they'll replace you. Ethan stared at the towering skyline from his penthouse. For years, this had been everything. Now it felt like nothing compared to the sound of his son's laughter, but the choice was not simple. Power was a habit, and letting go meant admitting he had lived for the wrong things. Asterisk one evening, Ethan arrived late, rain dripping from his coat. Claire's eyes blazed. This is exactly why I don't trust you. One phone call from your empire and you vanish. Noah cannot be a part-time obligation. Ethan flinched. It's not like that, then prove it, she snapped. Because if you walk away again, you don't just break me, you break him. Her voice cracked on the last word, and she turned away, tears slipping down her cheeks. Ethan stood frozen, realizing the depth of the damage he had caused years ago. Asterisk that night. Ethan sat with Claire at the kitchen table, silence stretching. Finally, she spoke, voice low. When I left you, I was pregnant. I wanted to tell you, but every time I tried, you were somewhere else, chasing the next deal, the next win. And when I realized you wouldn't notice even if I screamed, I decided Noah deserved better than a ghost. Ethan's throat tightened. You thought I wouldn't care. I thought you'd care about everything else more. Her words gutted him. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The truth lay between them, heavy, painful, undeniable. Asterisk the next day, Noah overheard them. His small voice broke the tension. Do I have to choose? Between you and Mum. Both adults froze. Ethan knelt, meeting his son's tearful eyes. No, you don't. You'll never have to choose. Claire swallowed hard, nodding. We're both here for you. Noah sniffled. Then promise. They exchanged a look. For once united, they said together, we promise. Asterisk, in the weeks that followed, things didn't magically heal, but they shifted. Ethan showed up consistently. He drove Noah to school, helped with homework, endured burnt dinners and messy art projects. He even laughed, really laughed, when Noah tricked him into playing tag in the yard. Claire remained cautious, her walls high, but she couldn't deny the light returning to her son's eyes. One night, as she tucked Noah in, he whispered, I think Dad means it. Claire kissed his forehead, heart aching. I hope so, sweetheart. I really do. Asterisk, Ethan stood outside the house under the starlit sky, his breath fogging in the cool air. Inside, his son slept peacefully, and Claire, though distant, had allowed him a place in their world. It wasn't redemption. Not yet, but it was a beginning. Ethan whispered into the night, I'll prove myself. No matter how long it takes. And with that vow, the next chapter of their lives began. The days after the hospital settled into a strange rhythm. Ethan Stone, who once commanded conference rooms filled with powerful investors, now found himself awkwardly standing in Claire's cramped living room. The empire he had built felt a world away from this modest space where Lego bricks carpeted the floor. The couch sagged from years of use, and love was stitched into the very walls despite the peeling paint. He wasn't used to silence at least not this kind. His penthouse silence had been cold, sterile, echoing against marble and glass. Here silence felt alive, filled with the breath of a child coloring at the kitchen table, with the faint hum of a washing machine, with Claire's footsteps as she moved about cautiously after her collapse. Noah eyed him warily, as if measuring whether this tall stranger belonged here. Ethan didn't know what to do with his hands, so he stuffed them into his pockets. He wanted to say something, anything, but words felt too small. Claire broke the tension. If you're going to hover, at least make yourself useful. She handed him a grocery bag. Ethan caught it clumsily. Right, useful. He hadn't done groceries in years. Assistants handled that. He opened the wrong cabinet twice. Noah giggled. Ethan gave a sheepish smile. It was the first sound of laughter between them, faint but real. Asterisk, parenthood, Ethan discovered, was made of small humiliations. The next morning, he tried to make pancakes for Noah. He poured too much batter, and the pancakes burned around the edges, while remaining raw in the middle. Noah poked one suspiciously with his fork. Is it supposed to look like that? Ethan sighed. In my head, it looked much better. Claire arched an eyebrow. Ambition won't save breakfast. Noah snickered. Ethan accepted the teasing with a grimace, then promised, I'll do better tomorrow. Later, when he offered to drive Noah to school, he got lost. His sleek car attracted stares in the modest neighborhood, and when he pulled into the school lot, Noah slouched in his seat, mortified. Couldn't you get a normal car? The boy muttered, This is normal where I'm from. Well, it's not here. The words stung more than Ethan expected. He realized fatherhood wasn't about impressing, but about fitting into a world he had ignored. Asterisk, one evening, Ethan returned with bags of new clothes and toys for Noah designer labels, top-of-the-line gadgets. He spread them out proudly on the couch. Noah's eyes widened, but Claire's narrowed. Are you trying to buy him? She snapped. I'm providing. Isn't that what fathers do? Ethan argued. Providing isn't about receipts, she shot back. It's about presence. About showing up. You can't throw money at the years you missed. Her voice trembled with restrained fury. Noah shifted uncomfortably, sensing the storm. Ethan exhaled. "You're right. I don't know how to do this, but I'm trying." Claire's glare softened a fraction, but the wall between them remained. Over the following weeks, Ethan learned that Noah's trust couldn't be won with grand gestures, had to be built in fragments. They worked on homework together. Ethan, who once negotiated billion-dollar contracts, found himself stumped by sixth-grade math. Noah laughed at his mistakes, but then explained patiently, as if teaching his own father. Ethan listened, genuinely humbled. They played catch in the backyard. Ethan's throws were too strong at first, sending the ball over the fence twice. By the third try, Noah's grin widened as he caught one perfectly. At night, Ethan told stories. They weren't polished, but Noah leaned forward eagerly as Ethan spun tales of space explorers and daring knights. For the first time, Noah fell asleep with a faint smile instead of clutching his bear in fear of bad dreams. Claire noticed. She wouldn't admit it aloud, but she saw the light in her son's eyes and how it grew brighter each time Ethan returned. One afternoon, Noah tugged on Ethan's sleeve. "Dad, can you come to my game next week?" The word "dad" nearly stopped Ethan's heart. He nodded, voice rough. "I wouldn't miss it." Claire often watched from the doorway, her arms folded tightly. She saw Ethan fumbling with burnt dinners, tripping over Lego bricks, or nodding off in a chair while Noah slept against his shoulder. Against her will, something inside her softened. But then came the memories, the nights she sat alone in emergency rooms, the birthdays she wrapped gifts with trembling hands, the mornings Noah asked why he didn't have a father. The bitterness rose like bile. She whispered to herself, "He doesn't get to erase that." Still, one evening she found herself pausing at the sight of Ethan brushing a tear from Noah's cheek after a nightmare. His touch was tender, unpracticed, but real. Noah clung to him, whispering, "Don't leave." Ethan's eyes filled as he answered softly, "Never." Claire turned away quickly, tears burning in her own eyes. Pain and longing warred inside her, leaving her sleepless. For the first time in years, she admitted she wasn't sure what she wanted anymore. The trouble came when Ethan least expected it. It was an ordinary afternoon when Claire's phone rang. The voice on the line was sharp with worry. "Noah's gone missing from the playground. We think he ran off after some boys teased him." Claire's chest constricted. Her hands shook as she grabbed her coat. When she burst outside, Ethan was already in the driveway, his face pale. "Get in. We'll find him." They drove in silence, the storm of panic louder than any words. Claire's mind replayed Noah's small smile, his trust, how fragile it was, how icily broken. When they arrived at the school, teachers scattered through the grounds, calling Noah's name. Finally, Ethan spotted him, a small figure crouched beneath the bleachers, hugging his knees. "Noah," Claire gasped, rushing forward. But the boy flinched away, burying his face. "I don't need a dad," he muttered, his voice muffled. "It's easier if I don't." Ethan froze, his heart shattering. He crouched low, rain dripping from his hair, and spoke softly. "You're right. It would be easier, but I don't want easy. I want you. The hard, messy, real you. And I want to be your dad, even if I fail 1,000 times." Noah's small shoulders shook. "You'll fail," he whispered. Ethan nodded, his voice breaking. "Probably, but I'll still be here." The boy turned, tears streaking his face. Slowly, hesitantly, he let Ethan pull him into an embrace. Ethan held him tightly, as though the act itself could rewrite 7 years of absence. Claire watched, her own heart breaking open, as father and son clung to each other in the rain. That night. After Noah had fallen asleep between them on the couch, Claire stood in the doorway, watching Ethan. His suit was damp, his face weary, but his hand rested protectively over Noah's small chest. "You looked terrified back there," she said quietly. Ethan didn't look up. "I was." His voice was raw, stripped of arrogance. "I've closed deals worth billions without breaking a sweat. But being a father, I'm afraid every second. Afraid I'll ruin him. Afraid I'll lose him like I lost you." Claire's throat tightened. "Then why stay?" "Because walking away once was the worst mistake of my life." His voice cracked, eyes glistening. "Even if I'm terrible at this, even if you never forgive me, I'll be here. For him. For you, if you'll let me." The silence between them was thick, but different than before. For the first time, Claire saw not the ruthless CEO, but a man, stripped, bare afraid, broken, yet desperate to be better. She didn't answer. She couldn't, but she didn't turn away either. Noah stirred in his sleep, whispering, "Dad," and clutching Ethan's shirt tighter. And for Ethan Stone, it was enough. The days after the incident at school carried a new weight. Something had shifted, not only in Noah, who no longer looked at Ethan with suspicion, but in Ethan himself. He moved with a kind of humility Claire had never seen before, as if every gesture was a vow. On Saturday morning, Noah tugged at Ethan's hand. "Can we go to the park? Just us?" Ethan glanced at Claire, hesitant, but she nodded slowly. "Go ahead." They spent the afternoon chasing soccer balls, sharing ice cream that melted faster than they could eat it, laughing until their sides ached. When they returned, Noah was grinning ear to ear, and for the first time, he introduced Ethan to a neighbor boy with a shy, proud smile. "This is my dad." The words landed in Ethan's chest like a sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Claire overheard, and though her heart clenched with old pain, tears blurred her vision. That evening, rain began to fall again, softer this time. Claire found Ethan sitting on the porch steps, staring out into the night. She joined him, silence stretching between them. "You've changed," she murmured. He gave a small, tired smile. "Trying to... for him." "For you," she didn't reply. But when his shoulder brushed against hers, she didn't move away. Inside, Noah's laughter drifted through the window, bright and unguarded. The storm between them hadn't cleared, but, for the first time, a fragile truce had taken root, tentative, but alive. And as Ethan looked at the little blue house, its windows glowing against the dark, he realized he had finally stepped into unfamiliar territory, not as a conqueror, but as a father learning, stumbling, and staying. Life in the little blue house had found a fragile rhythm. Ethan was there most mornings now, fumbling with Noah's lunches, sometimes even attempting Claire's grocery lists. Claire allowed it, but the air between them stayed thick, heavy with everything unsaid. Noah, quick to sense tension, tried to fill the silence with jokes and chatter. He was bright, hopeful, desperate for the family he had never had, but even his laughter couldn't drown the undercurrent. On the surface, things looked calm, yet underneath, old fears, new doubts, and years of resentment pressed closer, like thunderclouds building on the horizon. The shift came on a crisp autumn afternoon. Noah burst through the door, waving a colorful flyer. "Mum, Dad, there's a fall festival at school this Friday. Families come together. Can you both come? Please." Claire froze. School events meant whispers, judgmental stares, awkward questions. For years, she had borne them alone, but Ethan's voice was steady. "If you'll have me there, I wouldn't miss it." Claire hesitated. She saw Noah's pleading eyes, felt her own resistance weakening. "We'll both be there," she said at last. Noah whooped with joy, unaware of the storm the promise stirred in his parents. The school gym buzzed with laughter and music. Children darted between booths. Claire walked beside Noah, Ethan just a step behind. For a fleeting moment, they almost looked like any other family, until a voice cut through the crowd. "Ethan Stone." Ethan stiffened. A tall man in an expensive coat approached, his smile sharp. "Martin Halen, old rival from the corporate battlefield. I didn't expect to see you here," Martin said, his gaze sweeping over Claire and Noah. "Thought you'd be too busy running your empire." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm here with my family." Martin's smirk deepened. "Family, huh? Funny, never heard about them before." The words struck like knives. Noah shrank closer to Claire, who glared daggers at Ethan. For the first time in years, Ethan felt powerless, not before a boardroom of sharks, but in front of his son and the woman he had once lost. The car ride home was thick with silence until Claire's fury erupted. "You just stood there. You let him humiliate us." Ethan gripped the wheel, knuckles white. "I wasn't going to make a scene at Noah's school, so you let him think we're nothing." She snapped. "I don't care what he thinks," Ethan shot back. "I care about Noah." From the back seat, Noah clamped his hands over his ears. "Stop yelling." The argument died instantly. Shame filled the car, heavier than the storm clouds outside. Neither adult spoke another word until they reached the house. 2 nights later, thunder rattled the little house on Maple Street. Rain slammed against the windows, wind howled through the trees, and the power flickered. Claire hurried to shut the windows while Ethan tested the flashlights. Noah sat, curled on the couch, wide-eyed, clutching his stuffed bear. Every crack of thunder made him jump. The storm outside mirrored the one inside. Claire and Ethan hadn't spoken much since the festival argument, their words sharp when they did. Now the silence between them was louder than the thunder. Claire muttered, "This house isn't safe in weather like this." Ethan glanced at her, irritation flashing. "I'm here. I won't let anything happen." But the tension between them was too strong. And in that tension, neither noticed Noah slipping quietly from the couch, creeping toward the door. When the next thunderclap shook the walls, Claire turned and froze. "Noah." The front door banged against the wind, wide open. Rain poured in. "Noah." She screamed. They ran into the storm, voices raw, calling his name. Rain pelted their faces, soaking through clothes. Lightning split the sky, revealing flashes of flooded streets and trembling trees. Ethan's heart pounded. His empire had never terrified him, but the thought of losing Noah, his son, left him breathless with panic. Finally, Claire spotted him. There. Noah stood near the swollen creek at the edge of the street, his small frame trembling in the downpour. Water rushed violently, threatening to pull anything into its current. "Noah!" Ethan shouted, fighting against the storm. "Get back." But the boy shook his head. tears mixing with the rain. I just wanted it to stop. I thought if I went out, it wouldn't be so loud. His voice broke. I hate storms. Claire's sob tore from her throat. Baby, come here. Before Noah could move, the ground beneath him shifted. His foot slipped toward the rushing water. No, Claire screamed. Without hesitation, Ethan plunged forward into the torrent. The creek roared like a beast, swollen from the relentless rain. Ethan plunged into the icy water, his breath knocked from him as the current seized his legs. But he fought forward, eyes locked on Noah. Noah, I've got you, he shouted over the thunder. The boy slipped, arms flailing, terror etched on his face. At the last second, Ethan lunged, catching him by the arm. The force nearly dragged them both under, but Ethan anchored his body against a boulder, pulling Noah tight against his chest. I've got you, he gasped, voice breaking. I'll never let go. Do you hear me? Never. Noah clung to him, sobbing into his soaked suit. Dad, don't let me fall. I won't, Ethan swore, summoning strength he didn't know he still had. Inch by inch, he fought the current until his feet found solid ground. With one final heave, he stumbled onto the muddy bank, collapsing with Noah still locked in his arms. Claire rushed forward, dropping to her knees beside them. She gathered both of them into a shaking embrace, rain and tears mingling. For the first time in 7 years, they held each other not as broken pieces, but as a family fighting the storm together. By dawn, the tempest had passed. Branches littered the street, puddles shimmered under the pale morning sun. Inside the little house, blankets cocooned the three of them. Noah slept soundly between his parents, his face peaceful for the first time in days. Claire looked at Ethan. His hair was damp, his face pale, but his arms stayed wrapped protectively around their son even in sleep. You risked your life, she whispered. Ethan's eyes opened, weary but steady. I did what any father should. Claire studied him, seeing not the ruthless billionaire but the man who had fought the storm for their child. Something inside her shifted, not forgiveness yet, not love reborn, but hope. She leaned back, letting her gaze rest on the little blue house. The storm outside was gone, but the storm inside them had only just begun to clear. Still, the air smelled fresher, cleaner, as if something new might grow where destruction had once reigned. For the first time, Claire allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, Ethan Stone could truly be the father Noah needed, and the man she once loved. The storm had passed, leaving Maple Street quiet beneath a washed sky. The little blue house bore scars, loose shingles, a broken fence butt inside. The three of them were safe. Noah stirred first, his small body sandwiched between his parents. When his eyes fluttered open, he found both Ethan and Claire still there, one arm draped protectively across him from either side. He smiled drowsily before drifting back to sleep. Claire studied Ethan's face in the pale light. His features were softened by exhaustion, stripped of arrogance. He looked younger, almost vulnerable. For the first time, she saw not the ruthless CEO, but simply a man, flawed but present. Later, as coffee brewed in the kitchen, Ethan spoke quietly. I'm not leaving again. Not for work. Not for anything. Claire's brows knit. Words are easy. Then watch me, he said, voice steady. That morning, Ethan made a call that shook the foundation of his empire. His assistant's voice was frantic on the other end. You can't just disappear, Ethan. The board. Tell them I'm unavailable, Ethan interrupted. Indefinitely, there was a pause. They'll replace you. Let them, Ethan's voice didn't waver. My son won't. When he hung up, Claire stared at him, stunned. You'd throw away everything. Ethan looked at Noah, who was coloring at the table. Everything was never really mine. This is. The days that followed were different. Ethan helped fix the creaky step on the porch, with Noah proudly handing him nails. He tried chopping vegetables, earning laughter from Claire when he nearly sliced too much. Evenings became story time, or messy board games that ended with all three of them sprawled on the floor in laughter. The house echoed with sounds. Claire hadn't heard in years laughter that wasn't forced, joy that wasn't fleeting. Slowly, Noah stopped glancing nervously when Ethan left the room. He trusted that his father would come back. One night, as Ethan tucked Noah into bed, the boy whispered, I like it better when you're here. Ethan swallowed hard. So do I, buddy. So do I, but the world beyond Maple Street didn't stay quiet. Headlines buzzed. Billionaire CEO missing in action. Shareholders demanded explanations. Paparazzi parked down the street, hungry for photos. One evening, Ethan's phone buzzed with relentless calls. Claire frowned. You can't hide forever. I'm not hiding, Ethan said, silencing the phone. I'm choosing, and I choose this. Yet even as he said it, Claire saw the tension in his jaw. The empire he had built wasn't letting him go without a fight. Even as the days grew warmer with laughter. Claire's walls stayed firm. She had built them high, brick by brick. Through years of abandonment and lonely nights, sometimes she caught herself softening, watching Ethan teach Noah to ride a bike or burn yet another batch of pancakes. But then the memories returned, the birthdays spent alone, the lies she whispered to Noah about why his father wasn't there, the ache of carrying everything by herself. One evening, when Noah had gone to bed, she confronted Ethan. You think a few weeks of effort makes up for 7 years? Ethan's face fell. No, I know it doesn't. Then why do you keep trying? She demanded, his voice cracked. Because I can't change the past, Claire. But I can fight for the future. For him. For us, if you'll ever let me. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him. But believing meant risking her heart all over again. The truth came not from them, but from Noah. At dinner one night, he set down his fork, his small hands trembling. I don't care about the company, or the money, or the fights. His eyes flicked from his mum to his dad. I just want us together. The words silenced the table. Claire blinked, tears filling her eyes. Ethan sat frozen, guilt and hope warring across his face. Can't we try? Noah whispered, his voice breaking. Claire reached for his hand. Ethan reached it. For the first time, their hands met across the table, bound not by forgiveness or love, but by the plea of their son. It wasn't a solution, but it was a start. Days turned into weeks. The little blue house, once filled with shadows of struggle, slowly began to glow with new life. One Saturday, Claire spread out paint cans on the porch. The kitchen walls could use a new coat. Ethan raised a brow. You're trusting me with a paintbrush. Noah giggled. He'll make a mess, Mom. And he did. Within minutes, Ethan had more paint on his shirt than the wall. But Noah squealed with laughter, and even Claire found herself laughing until her sides hurt. By the time they finished, the walls were uneven but bright, splashed with warmth Later that month, they planted flowers in the front yard. Neighbors watched curiously as the once intimidating billionaire knelt in the dirt beside his son, hands filthy, grinning like a boy himself. For the first time, the whispers around Claire didn't sting. Every small ACP-ting walls. Cooking dinners, late-night stories wove light into the house. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. One quiet evening. As rain pattered softly outside, Claire stood at the porch window, watching Ethan and Noah toss a ball in the yard. The scene was ordinary muddy sneakers, laughter in the fading light, but to her, it felt like everything. She realized healing wasn't about erasing the past. It was about building something new, fragile but real. When Ethan came in, breathless and smiling, she didn't step away when his shoulder brushed hers. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future. Not perfect, not easy, but filled with light. The little blue house on Maple Street, once a place of loneliness, had become a house of light. And inside it, a family was learning how to begin again. Time did not race in the little blue house on Maple Street. It unfolded gently, like the turning of pages in a well-loved book. In the months after the storm, the fragile truce between Claire and Ethan deepened into something sturdier. Ethan became part of their everyday life, not as a guest hovering on the edges, but as someone woven into the rhythm of their days. He knew which cupboard held the cereal, how Noah liked his sandwiches cut. When Claire needed tea after a long shift instead of coffee, Noah grew quickly, his legs stretching taller each year, his voice losing some of its childlike lilt. With each birthday, Ethan was there clapping the loudest, fumbling with candles, laughing when frosting ended up on his expensive shirt. The house, once marked by loneliness, now rang with the sounds of life. Laughter at spilled paint cans, groans at burnt dinners, cheers at soccer victories. Even arguments real, messy. Human arguments added texture to the life they were building. And Claire, who had once carried everything alone, felt the burden lighten. She didn't forget the years of absence, but she began to trust the presence Ethan offered now. Ethan's world changed more than anyone expected. He didn't abandon his company, but he reshaped it. He learned to delegate, to cut meetings short, to leave the office before dark. Headlines buzzed about the billionaire who traded boardrooms for baseball games. But Ethan didn't care at first. His colleagues scoffed. But when quarterly reports still came in strong, they began to respect his choices. Family first, Ethan told them simply whenever questions arose. Claire, too, rebuilt herself. She returned to nursing, not out of desperation this time, but with renewed passion. With Ethan sharing responsibilities, she no longer carried everything alone. Her confidence bloomed again, not brittle from exhaustion, but rooted in strength. Together, they balanced life. Ethan learned the rhythms of school drop-offs and parent-teacher nights. Claire relearned the joy of having a partner beside her. And Noah thrived, grounded by the stability he had once only dreamed of. The joy wasn't in grand gestures, but in small moments. One Christmas, they decorated a crooked tree together. Ethan tangled the lights hopelessly, Noah teased him mercilessly, and Claire laughed until tears rolled down her cheeks. The tree leaned, the ornaments clashed, but it was the most beautiful one Claire had ever seen. On summer nights, they grilled in the backyard. Neighbors stopped by, surprised to see the once intimidating billionaire flipping burgers with grease on his hands, laughing freely. For the first time, Claire didn't mind the whispers. She was too busy enjoying the sight of her son and his father laughing under strings of fairy lights. There were vacations, two simple ones. A road trip to the coast, where Noah collected shells and Ethan burned his nose in the sun. A camping trip where Ethan proved utterly useless at pitching a tent, and Claire had to step in, rolling her eyes affectionately while Noah collapsed in laughter. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Asterisk life still had its rough edges. Arguments fled about finances, about parenting styles, about lingering hurt that sometimes resurfaced in Claire's heart. But instead of silence or avoidance, they learned to talk through it. Noah witnessed it all, the raised voices, the reconciliations, the quiet apologies whispered in the kitchen when they thought he was asleep. And he learned something more valuable than perfection, that love wasn't about never fighting, but about always choosing to come back together. Each triumph was sweeter for the struggle. Noah's first soccer trophy, Claire's promotion at the hospital, Ethan's announcement that he had officially stepped down from his CEO title to serve only as board chairel, celebrated not with champagne in glass towers, but with pizza and ice cream in the messy little kitchen. The house on Maple Street wasn't grand, but it glowed with the richness none of them had known before. Asterisk. Years slipped by faster than any of them expected. The school gym was alive with color and noise on graduation day. Rows of students in blue gowns shuffled nervously, tassels swaying as families packed the bleachers. Claire sat near the front, her hand intertwined with Ethan's, though neither of them spoke. Their eyes were fixed on the tall young man in the line of graduates. Noah. He had grown into himself, shoulders broad, his stride confident. His smile carried both Claire's warmth and Ethan's determination. Watching him walk across the stage, Claire felt her chest swell until she thought it might burst. Tears blurred her vision. Beside her, Ethan's jaw clenched. He didn't wipe his eyes when they watered. He didn't care who saw. The boy they had once almost lost to storms, both literal and emotional, stood before them, transformed. Asterisk. When Noah was announced as valedictorian, Claire gasped. Ethan's hand tightened around hers. Noah stepped to the podium, his voice steady but soft at first. "I grew up in a little house on Maple Street," he began. "It wasn't perfect. We had storms, lots of them. But inside those walls, I learned what matters most." The audience leaned in. Noah lifted his chin. "Family isn't about never making mistakes. It's about showing up again and again, even when it's hard. My parents taught me that. My mum taught me strength. My dad taught me change is possible. And together, they taught me hope." His voice wavered, then steadied. "So to anyone who feels like storms will never end, sometimes they don't. But if you hold on long enough, if you choose to stand together, you'll find the light after." The gym thundered with applause. Claire sobbed openly, and Ethan's chest swelled with pride so fierce it nearly undid him. Asterisk. That evening, after the celebrations, they returned to the little blue house. Balloons drifted along the ceiling, cake crumbs littered the table. Claire and Ethan stood on the porch while Noah laughed with friends in the yard. The sunset painted the sky gold, soft and forgiving. Ethan slipped an arm around Claire's shoulders. She didn't pull away. "Remember the night of the storm?" he murmured. "How could I forget?" She said with a small smile. "I promised I'd never leave again," Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. He looked at her, eyes glistening. "And I kept that promise." Claire turned to face him fully, the weight of years reflected in her gaze. "Yes," she whispered, tears shimmering. "You did." At that moment, Noah bounded up the porch, taller now, stronger, but still their boy. He wrapped his arms around them both. The three of them stood together, watching the last rays of sunlight fade into night. The house behind them glowed with warmth. The storms had not vanished, but they had learned to weather them together, and as dawn approached on the horizon of their lives, the promise was no longer just words. It was their truth, their joy, their forever.